Welcome to Celebrity Interviews with Paul. Today I have with me Colin Sullivan. Colin is the Deputy Director of Athletics at Brown University, but more significantly, of course, he was a teammate of mine at the University of Mary Washington, where we ran cross country and track together. We were on the last men's cross country team to run as a team at the NCAA National Championship. So we proudly carry that banner. Welcome to Celebrity Interviews, Colin.
Oh, thank you for having me, Paul. It's great to connect with you. Even though it's over Zoom, so it's just great to connect and reminisce and obviously talk about what the challenges we face today.
Absolutely. So, your wife, you have two daughters who are teenagers. You got a couple of dogs at home. How's the pandemic treating the Sullivan family these days?
We've actually realized that we enjoy each other's company. So, we've obviously been living. Yeah. So we've been living under the same roof, working under the same roof. I have two teenage daughters. They've, been handling the remote learning, very well. And then my wife is a school teacher, so she was conducting homeroom every day in the house, in the dining room. And then obviously we had the two dogs running around, and obviously, they would disrupt homeroom when it was feeding time. So it was
absolutely.
We've adapted nicely, but we've also enjoyed the time together.
That's good. That's good. I've heard that story a lot. That people, a lot of people I talk to have embraced being together and being as a family, and the importance of that, and kind of re-engaging and actually like having time to have dinner together, which is kind of a new thing with active kids.
Yeah,
so
no, I've noticed that, in my line of work, it's, many of the athletic events are nights and weekends. And this is really, it's just, it's brought me home, and we've been able to sit around the dinner table and connect. I do obviously miss the athletic events, but obviously I have that time back as well to be able to get home at a reasonable time, because I am at home and have dinner. So
there you go. Well, I'm guessing that summers aren't terribly busy normally at a university, doing some prep work and things like that, but not as much craziness. But I'm guessing this summer at Brown, things are a little bit different with COVID and all that as you make preparations.
Yeah, we were all. Our world changed back in March. We go from playing a men's lacrosse game versus the University of Virginia, hosting a sold-out crowd on March 8th, and had a come from behind victory over the number 8 team in the country, to a few days later hosting Virginia Tech in women's lacrosse, and the team finding out prior to that game that would be the last game of the spring semester. And then shortly thereafter, students leaving campus to return to their homes, really with an unclear picture of what the future looks like. And we sit here today, really preparing for the unknown. I think we've done a lot of modeling, try to prepare for the return to campus. And I think the first piece is, how do we provide a healthy and safe return, focused on the residential aspect and the academic aspect? And then are there opportunities to provide, extracurricular activities such as, intercollegiate athletics? And, how does that all fit into repopulating a campus? But the understanding that these campuses are, there's a lot of geographic diversity from where people are coming, whether it's, domestically or globally, and, and how does that look once these people converge on campus?
Well, yeah, Brown has some 7,000 undergrads, and a lot of those living in apartments and in residential halls and things like that. What's the thought for the fall? Are you going to have like single dorm rooms for everybody, and then do you have to create new dorm space or buy hotels up or something? Or
yeah, there's, we're exploring a number of different options. I think it's, if we have a 2-semester setup, we're exploring a 3-semester setup. So we're going to de-densify the campus. None of these decisions have been made yet. They're continued to be discussed. But does that then allow for a double to become a single, because you have less students on campus? I think some of the off-campus population will be regulated by the state and local rules and regulations that are going to apply to residents off campus. So I think, you know, we're continuing to look closely at a number of different possible scenarios. We're also looking to bring another dorm online. I don't know if it would be completed in time for the second semester, but you know, that would create some.
Is that big crane over your head there? Is that what that's about?
Yeah. There's a number of cranes. I tell you, the one thing that this situation has allowed for is to catch up on a lot of facility projects. So
yeah, there are no students around to get in the way, so you can keep the work going. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, most jobs would be better if we didn't have the people we have to serve around us, right?
That's right.
I mean,
I think we've discovered that we can work remotely as well sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's one thing.
Yeah, you know, and there are gifts, there are blessings and curses to Zoom. I mean, there are things that I'd like to continue to use on Zoom, even when we can be back in person together. And there are other ways where I'm just looking forward to not being on Zoom at all for a while too. I think. But so, you know, in terms of athletics and stuff, like how do you play football in COVID? I mean, and are you looking at like limiting the size of people at the stadium if you're having games? Putting testing protocols in place as people return to campus? What's the thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, as we look at this, I mean, we're exploring a number of different options, and part of it is a phased approach, and the phased approach would be, all right, how do we get a few individuals back to campus, and then how do you expand that group? You know, football becomes challenging because, you know, some of the groups, as you expand, you might be expanding from 10 to 25. You know, football, you know, typically has a roster of, you know, 100 to 110 student athletes. Then those individuals need to access the training room. They need to access the locker rooms. They need to access the equipment rooms. So we're continuing to explore, you know, how that, you know, could play out, and, you know, with respect to all of our sports at Brown, but then also with football. I think the one thing that differentiates Ivy League football from some of the other football in the country is we do not play into the NCAA playoff system. So, you know, if there was an opportunity, if we weren't able to play football in the fall, would it be something that we would consider in a spring season during an abbreviated maybe 7-game schedule? I do think a number of programs are looking at, you know, if you're looking at the FCS level football, some of them are looking to reduce their non-conference games. That'll have a ripple effect because some of those non-conference games could be against the FBS division. So they have fewer games because they're not going to be able to pick up an opponent this late. But as far as how do you provide a safe setting, I think you have to look at athletic training. You have to look at the actual facility. But we also have to be mindful of we're dealing with a student athlete population that is not going to be social distancing when they leave. They're going to be, especially, they're going to be integrated into all aspects of the campus and the campus community. So
you mean at Brown University they're not going to socially distance at parties on Friday nights? Are you kidding me?
No, maybe not on Friday nights because that's the night before a game. But if we're looking at on Saturday night, all rules off.
So are you guys looking at getting any information and insight from like what Major League Baseball is doing, what the NBA is doing, what hockey is doing? Are you learning anything from the professional level sports?
Yeah, I mean, we continue to look at that, and every day, you learn a little bit, about what's working and what's not working. I think as you look at those situations, there's going to be some limitations on college campuses relative to the professional environment. Obviously it's resources.
Right.
It's not like we've had established resources for these programs, and it's one of those things that we're going to continue to explore and lean on our university health services offices and the resources that we have through our campuses, and how that's going to work.
So at the end of the day, it sounds like I didn't even hear about a spring football season, which is interesting. Basically, everything's on the table, and we're really trying to think creatively about ways to make things work. And yet, at the same time, the realities of the way athletics work, particularly, there may not be much of a fall season for many of these sports.
Yeah, I think until there's a vaccine, I mean, there's some real concern on how you can provide a safe environment. You know, if
Well, and there's the one level that says, well, young people don't get that sick, which is not necessarily all that true. And then on the other hand, all those young people, they're going to come in contact with professors and faculty and support staff and old people like you and I. And so we need that support too. And
yeah, no, I think that's something.
It's not just about protecting the athlete; it's about everybody.
No, and I think that's where you're seeing when you see these conversations play out on college campuses. I mean, faculty are really concerned in how they, you know, if they have a pre-existing, you know, if you're a faculty member or a staff member that has a pre-existing health condition, obviously there's HIPAA laws in place, and you're not going to, you know, disclose some of those, but people could be impacted, and I think, you know, people's level of comfort on whether they're going to return to a classroom setting, or, you know, it could be a coach on the sideline in working.
Well, and there's HIPAA on the one hand, but there's also OSHA on the other. Then there's guidance about providing a safe work environment, and you're responsible for doing that too. So you gotta find a balance.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of places are going to be remote, and I think even if you are returning, you know, bringing staff back to campus, it's going to be in a reduced capacity. You know, certain folks could be on campus Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and others, you know, Tuesday, Thursdays.
So in the midst of working from home and Zooming from meeting to meeting, as you're doing today, and thank you so much for your time, where do you find joy in the midst of this?
I mean, it's with family. I mean, that's, you know, my daughters are at an age, and I continue to stay active with running. So, you know, that's, you know, people can say, how can you find joy in running? It's one of those things that, I mean, I can,
Yeah,
yeah. So it's one of those things. It's, you know, that brings joy. And now that I get to do it with my daughters and my wife, and we get to sort of share that time and get to explore. And, you know, when we were over in Spain last year, one great way to explore was on our feet. And we were able to take in many sites, and that, you know, would have, you know, not the normal person who isn't out there running on a daily basis could do. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I know it's going to be a challenging summer and fall, and taxing all of us. And the hard part with everything we do is what we do today is what we do today. And tomorrow we may have to make different decisions. And so people have to be, we are not very comfortable with change in general. And all of a sudden we're going to have to deal with change that's pretty consistent.
Yeah, no, this is, it's certainly challenging times, and we'll continue to put a couple steps forward and figure out where it's going to take us. But, you know, we only know what we know right now.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, Colin. And that was today's edition of Celebrity Interviews with Paul with Colin Sullivan, Deputy Director of Athletics at Brown University.